The International Space Station, 259 statute miles above the Earth, just south off the coast of South Africa, heading on a southeasterly course towards the Indian Ocean.
And station on 2, confirm capture point hold per step 8 and 1.102.
Copies. Step 8 in work. Primary range 12.04, secondary range 12.06. We do confirm CP hold. HCP lighting. Abort arm eliminated. Retreat arm eliminated. Hold arm eliminated. Free drift arm eliminated. Strobe light on eliminated. We have LiDAR lock, command path, and proximity level lights eliminated as well.
And we copy all.
Also verify the grapple fixture is stable within the capture volume. The dot is within the outer corridor of the nested corridors, and there is no limit check violations displayed to us.
Good copy.
Houston Station, capture conditions are confirmed. We like the lighting. Crew's ready for Cygnus capture.
Okay, we copy. Stand by.
Everything looking good from the perspective of the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Randy Bresnick reporting some good telemetry as the Cygnus vehicle holds at about 12 meters away from the International Space Station. The station's robotic arm in position. Now just going through the room here in Mission Control Houston for the go, no go to proceed with capture.
And station Houston on 2, go for Cygnus capture sequence. Step 4 of 1.110, Cygnus capture, and begin monitoring the back away Q card.
Station copies. Step 4.1 in work.
So everything looking good to be go for capture today. The crew on board the International Space Station flipping the switch to take control of the station's robotic arm and start moving it into in towards the Cygnus cargo vehicle for capture today. Looking at a capture time a few minutes past the hour today. We'll be reading off some key points as we close in towards the capture point. Motion confirmed of the station's robotic arm, now closing in on the Cygnus cargo vehicle. $3 meters away from capture. 2.5 meters. Now 2 meters away, everything looking good so far. Now over the pin. In the capture envelope. With that, the carriage is driving. And driving the final commands to capture the Cygnus vehicle 4:04 a.m. Central Time today over the southeastern Indian Ocean just southwest of Australia. And a beautiful shot of the station's robotic arm capturing the Cygnus cargo vehicle on his OA-8 mission. Again, 4:04 a.m. Central Time for that confirmed capture time. The Cygnus cargo vehicle flying over the South Indian Ocean, 200 and just over 260 miles above the Earth. Now reporting a good tension and the latches are driving. And everything looks latched.
And station on 2, we see a good capture. Great job, guys.
Happy. Cygnus capture complete. Go for Cygnus post-capture reconfig. Here's M1. And to the release. A big thank you to all the people around the world that contributed to this mission. Without your work and dedication, our presence in space would not be possible. The vehicle was named in honor of Gene Cernan, the last man on the moon. May we honor his legacy by returning to the moon and continuing the exploration of our universe.
Great words, and welcome to ISS to the Gene Cernan.
Some beautiful words from Paolo Nespoli aboard the International Space Station, recognizing the astronaut the vehicle was named after. There's a vehicle on Cygnus's OA-8 mission named after Gene Cernan, the vehicle from the teams at Orbital ATK in Dulles, Virginia, and here at NASA in Houston, Texas, at the Johnson Space Center. Great coordination for a capture of the Cygnus vehicle OA-8 mission at 4:04 of the Cygnus vehicle OA-8. 4 a.m. Central Time today over the South Indian Ocean, just over 260 statute miles above the Earth.
Station Houston on 2 for Joe.
Hey, Kathy, go on 2.
Yeah, Joe, just want to let you know the staging is in place for your Node 1 airflow clean and config activity, which means the Node 1 smoke detectors have been deactivated, and the crew is primed for smoke detection in Node 1.
Okay, I copy all, and that procedure is in work.
We copy, thank you.
Station Houston, spacing around 2 for Apollo when you have a second.
Station on 2 for Apollo, go ahead.
Apollo, Brother Penguin, just want to let you know congratulations are being sent your way from the folks in Dulles, and also from an experienced helicopter pilot. I thought you flew that really nicely. You done good.
Thank you, DJ. Really, really appreciate it. I would say that you guys at ATK and Orbital made this easy. The vehicle was rock steady, and we could not do anything better than what you already done. So thank you, and congratulations to all the team.
I'll pass that on for you.
Station on space to ground 2 for empty bag gather. That's a question from the daily summary. If this is a good time.
And we are ready for that.
Okay, Kathy, I'm referencing message 53-0578. If you're ready to go through that with me, I will start talking.
Okay, we are ready.
Okay, line 1, it asks to, in the notes column, it asks to report the serial number for the bag, just in case that wasn't conveyed earlier. It's 1176. The serial numbers for the 3 MO3 bags inside of that are 1020.
Okay, apologies for the technical difficulties that we've been having. It looks like we are back online. For those that are just tuning in now, the International Space Station is currently 256 statute miles above the Earth, just crossing the Terminator line into an orbital darkness over Australia, over the northeastern part of Australia. The Cygnus cargo vehicle is currently captured at the end of the station's robotic arm, thanks to the work of Paolo Nespoli and Randy Bresnik aboard, along with the teams here in Mission Control Houston, as well as the flight control teams of Orbital ATK over in Dulles, Virginia. The vehicle itself was captured at 4:04 a.m. Central Time today. That capture location was just over the South Indian Ocean, just over 260 miles, statute miles above the Earth. Again, that capture time 4:04 a.m. Central Time, thanks to the coordination of the astronauts aboard the International Space Station and teams here in Houston and in Dulles, Virginia. Right after capture, Paolo Nespoli, who was at the controls in the cupola workstation for the station's robotic arm, who actually performed the capture, had a few words to say right after that capture this morning. Some beautiful words from Paolo Nespoli. Again, that was recorded right after the capture at 4:04 a.m. Central Time, just replaying it now after we regained communications with NASA television. His reference to Gene Cernan, the vehicle itself, Orbital ATK's OA-8 mission named after Gene Cernan, the last man on the moon, the International Space Station being a gateway to future exploration into deep space, beyond and exploring the cosmos. Thanks to the commercial resupply missions, able to continue to support the International Space Station operations and the science that goes with it. Again, congratulations to the teams over in Dulles, Virginia at Orbital ATK's Mission Control Center, led by the mission director, Ken Peake. Here in Mission Control Houston, Flight Director T.J. Creamer leading the teams, Capcom Kathy Balt relaying the information, communicating with the crew that performed the capture today, Paolo Nespoli and Randy Bresnik aboard the International Space Station. Cygnus vehicle again captured at 4:04 a.m. Central Time today. We'll be back on the air at 5:15 a.m. Central Time to give you some installation coverage after robotic arm operators on the ground maneuver the Cygnus vehicle into its berthing position at the nadir port of Unity. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston. This is Mission Control Houston. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, November 14th, 2017. We are live here inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, awaiting the capture of the Cygnus cargo vehicle for Orbital ATK's OA-8 mission. Right now, the Cygnus cargo vehicle is just about 1.5 kilometers away from the International Space Station and approaching. It just initiated its third burn to approach the International Space Station, what's called the approach initiation burn. Still a little bit out of view, but coming towards the International Space Station for a capture time scheduled now at 3:50 a.m. Central Time. On board is 7,400 pounds of food, supplies, and experiments to be delivered to the Expedition 53 crew aboard the International Space Station. Here in Mission Control Houston, leading the teams today, Flight Director T.J. Creamer, and next to him, Capcom Kathy Bolt, who will be communicating with the crew aboard the International Space Station. Up in the robotic workstation in the cupola of the International Space Station is flight engineer Paolo Nespoli, working hand in hand with Randy Bresnik at the helms of the controls for the station's robotic arm that they will use to capture Cygnus today, once within range, again 3:50 a.m. Central Time. They'll be working, mission control teams here today in Houston will be working with Orbital ATK's flight control team in Dulles, Virginia, led by Mission Director Tony Foti. The visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control Houston, Jerry Yancheris, will be talking with NASA officials in Virginia and relaying vehicle status and updates to the flight director here in Mission Control Houston. Again, Cygnus is on its way to the International Space Station, just about to approach about 1 kilometer away from the International Space Station. Right now, from this view, you can see the tiny dot just about the top, maybe a little bit left of the center of the screen. Again, that is Cygnus just over 1 kilometer away, about 1,100 meters right now. This is just a less than 2-day rendezvous that we're looking at today. Again, capture at 3:50 a.m. Central Time after launching 2 days ago on Sunday, November 12th. At 6:19 a.m. Central Time on top of Orbital ATK's Antares 230 rocket, the Cygnus cargo vehicle lifted off from Pad 0A at Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. Just about an hour and a half later after that launch, at again 6:19 a.m. Central Time, solar arrays deployed, and it began its journey to the International Space Station. Its less than 2-day journey, again carrying 7,400 pounds of food, supplies, and experiments to the International Space Station. Orbital ATK now just crossed 1,000 meters from the International Space Station, again towards its approach for a 3:50 a.m. capture today. The spacecraft itself is called the SS Gene Cernan, named after the commander of Apollo 17, who passed away earlier this year in January 2017.
And Station Houston on 2, Cygnus range is 1,000 meters. Monitor long-range approach for step 1 and 1.102.
Just step 1 of 1.102 in work. Thank you.
Again, Capcom Kathy Balt here in Mission Control Houston, working with the robotic arm operators for today that will be using the station's robotic arm to capture the Cygnus vehicle once it gets into its capture position, just a few meters away from the International Space Station. That again is Paolo Nespoli at the helm of the control for the cupola workstation that will be using the station's robotic arm. He's working with NASA astronaut Randy Bresnik.
Step one, we confirm we have Cygnus inside, monitor and prime range, and PCS, ACP, everything looks normal.
We copy. Good news.
So far, good words from the crew aboard the International Space Station. Everything looking nominal for this approach. Again, Cygnus inside the 1 kilometer mark, about 1,000 meters away from station. Now actually just crossing the 850 meter mark. The next step on the agenda is one more burn that will bring it to its 250 meter holding point. That's just after the 1,000 meter holding point. We'll wait for that word here soon. Now in view is the Cygnus cargo craft. You can start seeing the solar arrays at the side. You see the back left there. Those are those ultraflex solar arrays on Cygnus, again about 800 meters away from station. Again, this is the inside of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Visiting Vehicle Officer Jerry Ancheris now inside at the bottom right of your screen. He is talking with NASA officials over in Dulles, Virginia, relating vehicle status and updates to the flight director. Again, leading the team over there, correction from earlier, Mission Director Ken Peake leading the flight control team in Dulles, Virginia. Here in Mission Control Houston, Flight Director T.J. Creamer leading the teams here, Capcom Kathy Balt right next to him there, a little bit towards the middle of your screen, relaying the information from the teams here in Mission Control Houston to our 2 robotic arm operators aboard the International Space Station, Paolo Nespoli and Randy Bresnik of Expedition 53. Inside 700 meters away from Station Cygnus, approaching the International Space Station, again named after Gene Cernan, the commander of Apollo 17, famous Apollo 17, and along with 2 other missions. One of them being the Gemini 9 mission, which he was on that mission, they on June 3rd, 1966, achieved the circular orbit of 161 statute miles. Used 3 different techniques to practice rendezvousing in space. They were rendezvousing with something called the Augmented Target Docking Adapter. And also on that mission, Cernan was the second American to walk in space after Ed White just a year earlier in 1965. His next mission, Apollo 10, he did everything but land on the moon as the lunar pilot. On that mission, actually went down in the lunar vehicle to about 8 nautical miles from the surface and lifted back up to test those procedures and get ready for the famous Apollo 11 mission where Neil Armstrong successfully landed on the moon in 1969. Cernan was One of the few astronauts to go to the moon twice. The second time, he was the commander of that mission. You can see at the bottom of your screen, Apollo 17. Again, Cernan passed away earlier this year in January 2017. This mission, Orbital ATK's OA-8 mission, named after him, the SS Gene Cernan. Cygnus inside 600 meters away from the station, a rate of about just under 1 meter per second approaching the International Space Station, about 565 meters right now. Cygnus is now about 500 meters away from the International Space Station, moving quickly, actually just about a half a meter per second at this point right now. Cygnus has about 250 meters more to go to the next checkpoint. Right at about 250 meters, it will begin its first hold point. Teams here will assess whether or not to move a little bit closer to the 30-meter hold point. Again, 250 meters more to go. Cygnus now in the daylight. About 263 statute miles is the International Space Station at the South Indian Ocean right now. Already passing the 450 meter mark and approaching the International Space Station at about 4.4 meters per second, slowing down a bit to get to that 250 meter holding point. Again, onboard Cygnus is 7,400 pounds of experiments, food, and supplies for the crew of Expedition 53 aboard the International Space Station. Many scientific experiments on board, some including studies into antibiotic resistance, high-speed data transmission, plant growth, and even improved power and communication technologies. One of them is the E. coli antimicrobial satellite. This mission will investigate microgravity's effect on the antibiotic resistance of E. coli, a bacterial pathogen responsible for urinary tract infections in humans and animals. Antibiotic resistance could pose a danger to astronauts, especially since microgravity has been shown to weaken the human immune system. This experiment will expose 2 strains of E. coli to 2 different doses of antibiotics. Results from this investigation could help determine appropriate antibiotic dosages to protect astronaut health during long-duration missions and help us understand how antibiotic effectiveness may change as a function of stress on Earth. Lots of other great studies aboard the Cygnus cargo craft, many including different satellites. One of them is called the Integrated Solar Array, short for ISARA. It's a hybrid solar power panel and communication solar antenna that can be send and receive data messages. It's tested to be used in the technology of a CubeSat-based environment for monitoring. ISARA, this is the name of the mission, may provide a solution for sending and receiving information to and from faraway destinations, both here and on Earth. That last satellite you were seeing, though, was the E. coli antimicrobial satellite that will be testing those different antibiotics against the strain of E. coli. Cygnus now inside 400 meters away from station, just about 375 right now, crossing that mark. Again, heading towards that 250 meter holding point at a rate of just under 0.4 meters per second. Cygnus now passing the 350 meter mark away from the International Space Station, still over the South Indian Ocean, 264 statute miles above the Earth right now is the International Space Station looking down on the spacecraft. The trajectory now turning towards a northeasterly direction to about to cross the southwestern portion of Australia into the terminator line and start entering an orbital nighttime. During this broadcast, the Cygnus vehicle and the International Space Station will go into an orbital sunset. There, the Cygnus will be holding at the 250 meter point and depart to get to that 30 meter holding point over the course of half an orbit, about 90 minutes to get back into the sunlight. Cygnus capture will occur during daylight so that ground control teams can monitor the progress of Cygnus approaching the International Space Station and its capture with the benefit of the illumination of the sun. Capture point again, 3:50 a.m. Central Time today. After the Cygnus vehicle is captured today, we'll go off air and come back at around 5:15 a.m. Central Time to start the installation coverage. The crew themselves will help to install the Cygnus by performing a few leak checks later in the day. However, they will not ingress the vehicle until the early hours of Central Time of tomorrow. Inside, again, are 7,400 pounds of experiments, food, and supplies. Lots of great studies on board OA8. One of them is the biological nitrogen fixation in microgravity via legume symbiosis. It's the study of the microclovers, which have a unique ability to convert nitrogen into nutrients. Nitrogen, of course, being the bulk of the makeup of Earth's atmosphere, as well as the International Space Station, providing a similar environment for the astronauts. Studying them in microgravity will allow researchers to investigate what types of living organisms and can grow best in the microgravity environment, and how the plant nutrients responds in the unique environment of space. Less than 50 meters to go to the 250-meter holding point. Great views of the Cygnus cargo vehicle as the International Space Station is just south of Australia right now, 263 statute miles above the Earth.
In the station, space to ground 2, do you mind if I start the equipment gather for the ITCS sampling and maintenance canister installation early?
You have a go to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Less than 25 meters to go for the Cygnus cargo craft to reach the 250-meter holding point. At this point, all of the approach burns have been conducted. Again, that was to get to that 250-meter holding point. There'll be a few check marks along the way to get into its capture position. One is the 250-meter mark, the other being 30 meters. Once at the 250-meter holding point, we will be crossing into the orbital nighttime. There, they will ground teams will assess the 250-meter holding point, see if everything's good, and then get to that next check mark at 30 meters. From 30 meters, it will move into its capture position, where again, Paolo Nespoli aboard the International Space Station, working hand in hand with Randy Bresnik at the Cupola workstation, will use the station's robotic arm to grab Cygnus, and from there, ground teams will take over the robotic arm controls to move it into its installation position. Less than 10 meters to go to get to the 250-meter holding point. You can start seeing the outline of the southern part of Australia, the International Space Station, just about 260 statute miles above the Earth, now passing right over Melbourne, Australia. In just a few minutes, the station and Cygnus will enter an orbital nighttime. And from there, the Cygnus will be at the 250-meter holding point. Ground team's already talking about assessing that point to start approaching to the next check mark at the 30-meter holding point. Right in between there is 200 meters. This is what's called the keep-out sphere. Within this realm, once it crosses the astronauts in the cupola workstation right now, again, Paolo Nespoli and Randy Bresnik will be able to issue an abort command just in case anything goes wrong within that range. About 4 meters to go to that 250-meter holding point. You can start seeing the darkness of the night side of the Earth now starting to take over as we cross into an orbital nighttime. The International Space Station now just east off the coast of Australia, where Sydney is right now. 259 statute miles above the Earth is the International Space Station, looking down at the Cygnus cargo craft, just about 250 meters away. Again, that holding point coming up soon.
And Station Houston on 2, Cygnus has arrived at the 250-meter hold point. We're going to need a few minutes to transition Cygnus to LiDAR navigation, and then we'll give you a call to perform Step 2 once that is complete.
Station copy, standing by.
Confirmation from the Capcom Kathy Bolt, relaying information to the crew aboard the International Space Station. Paolo Nespoli confirming that call. Cygnus now at the 250-meter holding point. Station is 258 statute miles above the Earth, just east of Australia over the Pacific Ocean. Now crossing the terminator line into orbital darkness, yet still illuminated by the sun. You can see the outline of Cygnus from this view, and the solar arrays at the bottom still illuminated by the sun. Ground teams here will assess the 250-meter holding point. If everything is go, they'll start approaching the International Space Station once again, slowly but surely, to the 30-meter holding point. A great view of the Cygnus cargo vehicle, the OA-8 mission, holding at about 250 meters away from the International Space Station as it crosses just east of Australia into the orbital nighttime, yet still illuminated by the sun. The International Space Station, 257 statute miles above the Earth right now. Ground team's currently assessing the 250-meter holding point, getting ready to depart and start approaching the International Space Station to the next check mark at 30 meters. Inside is 7,400 pounds of food, supplies, and experiments, awaiting for a capture time today at just about 3:50 a.m. Central Time. Right now you're getting a view of the what's called the Cuckoo workstation. This is the workstation being projected from, this is the same view that the astronauts have aboard the International Space Station, relaying telemetry of Cygnus to the astronauts and working hand in hand with the ground teams here. The important number to note on the right side of the screen is primary number VV to ISS. See, it's holding at 251. That's where it's holding right now, just over the 250-meter mark, as ground teams are continuing to assess whether to depart. From there, you'll see it decrease, and the range and rate will increase as it begins to approach to the 30-meter holding point. The International Space Station, 255 statute miles above the Earth. Astronauts going back and forth through the International Space Station working on various tasks, mostly right now monitoring the approach of the Cygnus cargo vehicle on its OA-8 mission, scheduled again for 3:50 a.m. capture time. International Space Station just east of Papua New Guinea and about northeast of Australia on a northeasterly course. Still on the orbital nighttime, you can see the light illuminating Cygnus, and some of the solar panels and equipment on the outside of the International Space Station have disappeared now, completely in an orbital nighttime. During the orbital nighttime, ground teams will assess whether to depart the 250-meter holding point. A full room today here in Mission Control Houston. Teams working on the capture of the Cygnus cargo vehicle today. Leading the teams today, back behind me actually, is the flight director T.J. Creamer, formerly an astronaut, now flight director, working hand in hand with the Capcom Kathy Bolt. We are all communicating with Ken Peak, over the mission director over in Dulles, Virginia. They're working with visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control, Jerry Yancheris, communicating some of the data and updates of the Cygnus cargo craft as it approaches the International Space Station. Again, about 7,400 pounds of supplies and experiments aboard the International Space Station. We've gone through a few of them, some of them being studies on antibiotic resistance and even plant growth, as well as a few CubeSats. For now, teams here in Mission Control assessing the 250-meter hold point, whether or not to depart and start approaching the International Space Station once again. So right in the middle of your screen, visiting vehicle officer Jerry Incheris, he's the one communicating with the flight control team over in Dulles, Virginia. Ken Peake is the mission director over there, working with the flight control teams, leading the Orbital ATK OA8 mission. The team there responsible for the flight of Orbital ATK's Cygnus mission after launch, completely in their hands up to about the joint operations of today's activities. That team now working hand in hand with flight control teams here in Houston, here at the NASA Johnson Space Center, for the joint operations of the capture of today's vehicle. Again, a lot of great experiments aboard the Cygnus cargo craft that's sitting 250 meters away right now. One of them is the Optical Communications and Sensor Demonstration Project. This project will study high-speed optical transmission of data and small spacecraft proximity operations. Basically, it will use lasers to communicate using CubeSats to provide a compact version of the technology. Results from this study could lead to significantly enhanced communication speeds between space and Earth, and a better understanding of laser communication between small satellites in low Earth orbit. The International Space Station has been a great place for companies to send small satellites and deploy them. There's actually a segment on the International Space Station on the outside of the Japanese module. Small satellites can be sent through a small airlock and actually launched from there, from the International Space Station. Sending these small satellites and putting them in a cargo vehicle like Cygnus, now that you can see illuminated with green and red lights sitting 250 meters away. It's a great place to deliver these small satellites and mitigate some of that cost rather than just launching these satellites straight up from a rocket. Cygnus now departing the 250-meter holding point as the International Space Station flies 252 statute miles over the middle of the Pacific Ocean right now on its way towards the International Space Station.
Station Houston on 2.
This is Mission Control Houston. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, November 14th, 2017. We are here live in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, awaiting the installation of the Cygnus cargo vehicle on Orbital ATK's 088 mission to the International Space Station. Currently, robotics officers on the ground are using the station's robotic arm to maneuver the spacecraft into its berthing position at the nadir port, or the Earth-facing side of the Unity module. Earlier this morning, Paolo Nespoli used the station's robotic arm. He was at the controls of the cupola workstation aboard the International Space Station. He used the station's robotic arm to capture the Cygnus cargo vehicle at 4:04 a.m. Central Time today. Working in tandem with Randy Bresnik, who was serving as a backup and alongside reading telemetry data from the workstation aboard the International Space Station, and working with flight control teams here in Houston. The same flight control team will oversee the installation operations this morning. Here in the room, Flight Director T.J. Creamer, former astronaut turned flight director here, leading the teams on the Orbit 1 team for the installation of Cygnus. Capcom Kathy Bolt next to him, communicating with the crew aboard the International Space Station for normal operations, while the ground teams oversee the installation. The capture at 4:04 a.m. Central Time comes less than 2 days after its launch on November 12th, this past Sunday. At 6:19 a.m. Central Time, it launched from Pad 0A at Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia on top of Orbital ATK's Antares 230 rocket. It was carrying 7,400 pounds of food, supplies, and experiments to the station, which are now on board Cygnus at the end of the station's robotic arm awaiting installation. The International Space Station, with the Cygnus at the end of the robotic arm here, is 253 statute miles above the Earth right now, over the middle of the Pacific Ocean, just east off the coast of Brazil. So robotics officers working through the installation process now. Right now, at the end of the station's robotic arm is the Cygnus vehicle moving towards the nadir port, the Earth-facing port of the Unity module, where it will stay for the next few weeks up until early December. The installation process will include the station's robotic arm driving it into that port. There are 4 gangs of 4 bolts, 16 bolts total, that need to be driven to complete the installation process. There's the first and second stage capture. On the second stage will be the official berthing time for today.
Houston Station on 2 for HIPAA cleaning.
Go ahead on 2.
Step 4.6. The filters did not look bad on the backside. I took some pictures beforehand with the macro, and I'll put that here on SSC8 shortly, but nothing out of the ordinary to report.
Okay, we copy. Thank you. And for those fasteners that you removed, were they captive or non-captive ultimately?
They were non-captive. It seems like they are the originals that probably came up, and so I have them in a Ziploc bag that hopefully will go into the hardware JSB.
Okay, we copy. Thank you.
Yeah, just let me know where you want those to end up.
We will check and see, and we'll let you know as soon as we have that.
While ground teams here in Mission Control continue to move the Cygnus vehicle into its berthing position, the astronauts aboard the International Space Station going through their normal day. Paolo Nespoli and Randy Bresnik were busy this morning in the cupola at the workstation with the controls to the robotic arm to capture the Cygnus vehicle. Immediately afterwards, they went right back to their normal day. Randy Bresnik went in to conduct his exercise. What you were just hearing on the loops were Kathy Bolt, the Capcom, communicating with Joe Acaba, going through his normal tasks today. This one in particular was a normal cleaning procedure, or for one of the port diffuser tape installations, removal procedures, just regular cleaning and maintenance aboard the International Space Station. Paolo Nespoli, who actually captured the Cygnus vehicle this morning, is busy working on a rack, the GeoFlow experiment, just doing some maintenance and installation work there.
Houston on 2 for HIPAA.
Go ahead.
We're looking at step 6.1, and it looks like the port 3 is an inlet and the port 4 is an outlet. Is that possible?
So that's exactly what we wanted to determine, so we appreciate that information.
Okay, we'll go ahead and clean it up and then tape it up, and we'll call it complete after that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Joe Acaba aboard the International Space Station, just going through his normal cleaning procedures. On top of the normal day-to-day maintenance of the International Space Station, plenty of science to do on board, and they're about to get more. The Cygnus OA8 mission inside the Cygnus vehicle is about 7,400 pounds of supplies and food and equipment, in addition to some science. One of the science experiments on board is the E. coli antimicrobial satellite. This mission will investigate microgravity's effect on the antibiotic resistance of E. coli, a bacterial pathogen responsible for urinary tract infections in humans and in animals. The antibiotic resistance could pose a danger to astronauts, especially since the microgravity environment has been known to weaken the human immune system. The experiment will expose 2 strains of E. coli to 3 different doses of antibiotics. And then the results from this investigation could help determine appropriate antibiotic doses to protect astronauts' health during long-duration missions and to help us understand how antibiotic effectiveness may change as a function of stress on Earth. Another science experiment on board the biological nitration fixation in microgravity for legumes. This investigation will examine how low gravity conditions affect the nitrogen fixation process of a plant called microclover. Really just looks like a tiny little clover that you would find in your lawn. It's a resilient and drought tolerant legume. The nitrogen fixation process is an interesting one. It's a process by which nitrogen in the atmosphere is converted into a usable form for living organisms, nutrients. It's a crucial element of any ecosystem necessary for most types of plant growth. And it's especially good for on Earth, the Earth's atmosphere mostly being nitrogen, and it being the same for the International Space Station environment. The investigation could provide information on the space viability of the legume's ability to use and recycle nutrients, and give researchers a better understanding of this plant's potential use on Earth. So in addition to some studies on biology, and which include the E. coli bacteria and the legumes that they'll be testing, they also have a few experiments on board Cygnus for high-speed data transmission as well as improving power and communications technologies. One of them is laser-based communication. The experiment's called Optical Communications and Sensor Demonstration, OCSD. This project will study high-speed optical transmission of data in small spacecraft proximity operations, so the small satellites that you see being launched from the station all the time. The OCSD investigation will test the functionality of laser-based communications using CubeSats that provide a compact version of the technology, and the results from this study could lead to significantly enhanced communication speeds between space and Earth, and a better understanding of laser communication between small satellites in low Earth orbit. As Cygnus moves closer into its berthing or installation position, I'll talk about one more experiment that's aboard the spacecraft right now that will investigate the need for improved power and communication technologies on the ISS. This one's called ISARA, I-S-A-R-A. It stands for the Integrated Solar Array and Reflect Array Antenna. It's a hybrid solar power panel and communications solar antenna that can send and receive messages, and test the use for this technology in CubeSat-based environment monitoring. Very similar to the OCSD the OCSD experiment studying high-speed optical transmission with the CubeSats as well. ISARA may provide a solution for sending and receiving information to and from faraway destinations, both on Earth and in space. So again, a lot of experiments on board the Cygnus cargo craft. There are more that I could talk about. There's more food, supplies, and experiments aboard. 7,400 pounds of it. Again, this was after launch on Sunday at 6:19 a.m. Central Time. It launched from Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. Less than 2 days later, was captured by the station's robotic arm with Paolo Nespoli at the controls. That was earlier this morning at 4:04 a.m. Central Time today. Some loss in our video communications. We should be coming in and out of communications over the next 15 or so minutes. In the meantime, robotics officers continuing to maneuver the Cygnus cargo vehicle into its berthing position. There's a camera with a sort of red lights that you can see in a spherical shape around the middle of the screen. That's the view from the common berthing mechanism on the nadir port of Unity. It's facing straight down towards Earth, and this is the very port where Cygnus will be attached to. You can see it be slowly moved into that position over time by the robotics officers. From there, after a few checks to make sure everything is okay and go for installation, the robotics officers will push it straight in to where it will be latched by 16 bolts. Once all the bolts are driven and locked, that will be a confirmed second stage capture or berthing installation, and that will be the official time for the berthing process. The crew is scheduled to perform a few leak checks later in the day today.
Houston Station on 2 for HEPA.
Go ahead on 2.
Okay, Kathy, so I put tape on the Atmos, which must be number 4, and that one we definitely felt was an outlet. And so after I put that tape on and then check number 3, so for step 6.1, we're going to change our final answer to both being outlets. I don't think the installation of the tape on port 4 would have changed the characteristics of 3, but in case it might have, just wanted to pass that along. But at this moment, we would call them both outlets.
Okay, we copy. They're both showing as outlets. And what type of tape did you end up using?
2-inch gray. Hope that was the right answer.
And we copy gray tape. Thank you. And that was fine.
Yeah, it's funny on to Houston. So I see in the stow note you have Kapton tape, and then I looked at the figure and it had it covered with gray, which is why I went with gray. But I'm happy to put Kapton if that's going to help the 7-day trial.
And the gray is acceptable. We weren't sure if the Kapton tape would stick or not, so gray tape is fine.
Okay, then I'm going to call that task complete.
Okay, that sounds good. We will reactivate the cabin fan and the smoke detectors now that you're complete, and we'll let you know when that is done. And then for your next activity, the airlock light install, just FYI, the safing is in place in step 1.1 for you whenever you're ready.
Copy that. We are ready to go for that, so we'll put that in work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're overhearing the normal space-to-ground loops between Capcom Kathy Bolt and Joe Acaba aboard the International Space Station, just going through his normal tasks, the next one being just installing a light in the airlock of the International Space Station. In the meantime, flight controllers here maneuvering the station's robotic arm to its installation position at the nadir port of Unity. And again, we'll be going in and out of some our video communications with the station here for the next 15 or so minutes. If you look closely, you can see the Cygnus cargo vehicle slowly moving right in front of the common berthing mechanism that you can see right there in the middle of your screen. Cygnus cargo vehicle on board is about 7,400 pounds of supplies and equipment. The slower the better for maneuvering such large volumes in space.
Station on Space to Ground 2, the PCS relocate from the airlock, or correction, from the cupola to the airlock is complete.
We copy. Thank you.
So Cygnus is still maneuvering into position. International Space Station just over 260 statute miles above the Earth, now over the South Indian Ocean on a northeasterly course towards the western coast of Australia, which is just past the Terminator line. You'll start seeing the views of Earth starting to go a little bit darker as we go into an orbital sunset.
Exercise constraints.
Hey, Kathy, on 2.
Yeah, just wanted to let you all know that we are about to approach the no exercise constraints. We're a little ahead on the timeline getting Cygnus installed. So Sasha, it looks like, is scheduled to begin his work on his velo exercise right now. If you could get word down to the Russian segment as well that we want no exercise for the next hour, and we'll give you a call when that restriction is lifted.
Okay, copy all. We'll let him know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a no exercise constraint is normal for operations like this. For installation operations, they usually call for the crew to hold from exercising. Think about the International Space Station being in a microgravity environment. All movements make some sort of motion, and every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So to avoid any sort of shaking that may occur on the International Space Station and make sure this installation goes as smoothly as possible, the mission control teams here in Houston call up to the crew to make sure they won't be exercising for at least the next hour. That gives us a nice window to understand when the berthing process will happen. We can expect it within the hour. The International Space Station now crossing the Terminator, now into an orbital darkness just west off the coast of Australia, still over the Indian Ocean on a right now northeasterly track. The view of the Earth has just gotten a little bit dark, still getting some illumination from the sun from 250 miles above the Earth. Actually, 259 is where the International Space Station sits now, 259 statute miles.
Station on 2 for airlock light.
The Cygnus cargo vehicle is almost aligned right in the middle of the common berthing mechanism now.
The airlock is complete, ready for power up, and I'll give you serial numbers when you're ready to copy.
We are ready. Go ahead.
Once in position, robotics officers will push it right into the common berthing mechanism, right in that middle red ring that you were just seeing earlier, and ground controllers will then drive the 16 bolts to lock it into place and officially berth or install the Cygnus vehicle to the International Space Station.
You are correct, ma'am.
Thank you. and station on 2 for the light power up. We'll get to it in just a few minutes. We're working on our SARG recovery right now after Cygnus. So give us a few minutes and we'll let you know when that light is powered up for a checkout.
Okay, we copy, thanks.
Crew on board the International Space Station working through their normal procedures as the Cygnus vehicle is getting pushed into its berthing position. Or more so aligned than pushed right now. What's left of the sunlight illuminating the Cygnus cargo craft has since gone. We are now past the Terminator line, International Space Station, flying across the Earth, now 256 statute miles above the Earth, just over the northwestern part of Australia on a northeastern course right now. Just the lights from the common berthing mechanism illuminating what's the berthing port of Cygnus. This is the actual view that's looking down onto the Cygnus cargo vehicle and exactly where it's going to be installed. It's on the nadir port, the Earth-facing side of the Unity module. Once berthed, it's planned to stay there for just a few weeks, about 3 or so weeks into early December. You're looking at Paolo Nespoli, currently in the Columbus module. His mission through the European Space Agency is the VITA mission. Right now, he's working to remove some experiment containers from the GeoFlow 2 experiment and stow them for disposal later. This is the task that he was assigned right after he was down in the cupola earlier this morning to capture the Cygnus cargo vehicle, which is now currently being installed to the International Space Station. Again, he captured the vehicle working with Randy Bresnik by his side at 4:04 a.m. Central Time this morning.
For the water sampling.
Go ahead on 2 for water sampling.
Kathy, I'm working on the next procedure in my timeline, and I'm looking at my stow note, and of course it's referencing the kit 1273, and I'm in 1272, and so I think that the one coliform detection kit that would have been in there was used last time. Do you have an alternative location that I can find a coliform detection kit?
You're checking. And Joe, while we're checking on that, just letting you know the airlock light is now powered for your checkout.
Okay, great, thanks.
The Expedition 53 crew going about a normal workday, currently aboard the International Space Station immediately after capturing the Cygnus cargo vehicle. If you want to see replays of that, you can follow the International Space Station accounts on any social media platform. A lot of the highlights have been posted already. Again, it was captured early this morning, 4:04 a.m. Central Time. Same team here working in the room. Flight Director TJ Creamer leading the teams, and you're hearing Kathy Bolt communicating with the crew for their normal tasks.
Thank you.
If you have questions about some of the activities, just use the hashtag AskNASA that we flash up every so often.
So you are no longer primed for smoke detection in Node 1. And station on 2 for Joe regarding your coliform detection kit.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
And Joe, since you are using the water kit serial number 1272, we were expecting there to be one coliform detection kit in there, and it should be serial number 1269. Can you confirm if you have that one?
I will check again, but I think that the last time I did the water sampling, I thought we used kit 1272. So if that was the case, then I would have used that detection kit. But I will look and see if I can find number 1270 in there.
And we're...
Sorry, what was the number you said?
Yeah, it's 1269 instead of 1270.
Okay, I'll look again, but I didn't see it. I'll give you a call right back.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So it may look like the Cygnus cargo vehicle is just sort of hanging out there, but there's a lot of going on the back end. Right now, the robotics officers are moving on forward to the ready-to-latch indicators. Once all of them are green lit, they'll drive the bolts and officially install Cygnus to the International Space Station. Again, this is after grapple by Paolo Nespoli at the controls of the station's robotic arm, working with Randy Bresnik. Grapple this morning was at 4:04 a.m. Central Time. Now maneuvering. Now that it's maneuvered into position, just waiting to officially install and get access to the 7,400 pounds of supplies, food, and experiments on board.
EHS water kit 1272. I don't see that. I have a microbial analysis kit number 1271, and in there it has 5 of the microbial analysis packets.
We copy and we're checking.
Okay, ready to latch is green lit, and we are beginning to drive the bolts.
Okay, Joe, sorry for the delay there. We expect that there should be a coliform detection kit inside that microbial analysis kit 1271 that you just called down. So you are go to scavenge the coliform packet from that kit if you'll just let us know what serial number that is when you get it.
Okay, copy, and looks like I have a number, so I'm taking it out of microbial analysis packet 1275. Let me get you the actual, see if the packet itself has a number on it.
So Cygnus is sitting in position. All 4 ready-to-latch indicators are green lit right now. First stage capture complete. Now just awaiting the second stage capture, driving all of those 16 bolts and really locking Cygnus into place. Where you're looking is the nadir port of the Unity module, the Earth-facing side of the module in the center of the International Space Station. Now just awaiting for driving all of those bolts and officially installing Cygnus to the International Space Station.
Did you say 1295 or 1275?
I think I said 1295, but let me check. That would be 1295.
Okay, we copy. 1295. And then just for everyone's awareness, want to let you know that we have capture first stage complete of Cygnus, so things are progressing along really well.
It is wonderful news, and we love the updates. Thank you.
So the second stage capture is in progress, still awaiting official confirmation for the official installation to Cygnus, for Cygnus to the International Space Station. So the 4 latches that capture the Cygnus to the International Space Station have been latched. All 4 are complete. Now just waiting for those 16 bolts to drive. Once all 16 are good to go and official and driven in, that will be the official capture time for today. Again, the 4 latches for second stage capture have been complete, and the 16 bolts are still continuing to drive. After the 16 bolts are driven, we will report the official installation time of Cygnus to the International Space Station.
Unstill station on 2 for your install.
Go ahead on 2.
Good morning. Your inflection kit barcode that ends in 6100 Juliet is empty. We'll put that in the pizza box in Golf Forward 2 in Columbus. And kit that ends in 6086 Juliet has 2 more collection devices inside of it, just for your tracking.
We copy all. Thank you.
Okay, so with the flight director confirmation, all 16 bolts have been successfully driven, and second stage capture of and installation of the Cygnus cargo vehicle to the International Space Station has been complete. All 16 bolts were driven and completed at 6:15 a.m. Central Time today, while the International Space Station was 252 statute miles over the North Pacific Ocean during the orbital nighttime. So with that, crew exercise is going to resume, and normal operations will begin. Crew is scheduled to do some leak checks and then ingress later, either today or tomorrow. So again, a recap of the day's activities from this morning. Capture of the Cygnus cargo vehicle OA8 mission was at 4:04 a.m. Central Time today. Paolo Nespoli at the controls of the station's robotic arm, working with Randy Bresnik to capture that vehicle. Ground controllers here in Mission Control Houston and others used the station's robotic arm to maneuver into its berthing position at the nadir port, the Earth-facing side of the Unity module, where it is installed right now. That official installation time is 6:15 a.m. Central Time today.
Station on 2, go ahead, please.
I just want to let you know we have reached A bolts with Cygnus berthing, which means that the exercise constraints are now lifted And so if Sasha or anyone else wants to get on the exercise equipment, they are welcome to do so. We do still have the window constraints ongoing, and we will give you a call when those are lifted. We expect that within the next hour.
Sounds great, Houston. Good news on the 8 bolts. We'll pass on the exercise.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that was Kathy Bolt, Capcom here in Mission Control Houston, confirming with the crew, the Expedition 53 crew aboard the International Space Station, exercise constraint is lifted. Operations of installing the Cygnus to the International Space Station are complete. Second stage capture installation was officially announced at 6:15 a.m. Central Time. All 16 bolts are driven, and Cygnus is locked in place at the nadir port of the Unity module, Earth-facing side, where it will remain for the next few weeks. Inside are 7,400 pounds of food and experiments aboard, and the station crew will be able to access that for the next few weeks while the vehicle is docked to the nadir port of Harmony. So in early December, the robotics officers will maneuver Cygnus to its release position. This will happen on December 3rd for an official release on December 4th, currently scheduled to end the Cygnus mission.
Copy, Node 1.
It will then fly away from the International Space Station and make a controlled re-entry into Earth's atmosphere and burn up over the Pacific Ocean. Burn up over the atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. So again, quick recap, 4:04 a.m. Central Time today was captured Cygnus vehicle on its OA-8 mission. This was over the South Indian Ocean, just over 260 statute miles above the Earth. Later, it was installed to the International Space Station at 6:15 a.m. Central Time today, 252 statute miles over the North Pacific. With the installation of Cygnus complete to the International Space Station, that'll wrap up our coverage for the Cygnus mission, officially installed and to remain there for the next few weeks. Congratulations to the teams here in Mission Control Houston, and of course to the flight controllers over in Dulles, Virginia at Orbital ATK's flight control room, who worked in tandem with the groups here for capture of today's vehicle. Now it's officially installed. We'll wrap up our coverage. This is Mission Control Houston.